Hello, this is Alex, your host. You're listening to the Doomed Planet podcast, episode 93, Kiss and Tell, rock groupie Carrie Stevens. Here she is on Twitter. She's an author, actress, DJ, and rock and roll centerfold. And her lurid autobiography came out a couple years ago, Unrated, Revelations of a Rock and Roll Centerfold. She says she was inspired to write this book when a couple of her tweets went viral. One was her admitting that she knew about one of her friend's affairs with Donald Trump, and the other was Oliver Stone grabbed my boob. And these things caused a firestorm. So she jumped in on the Me Too movement, I guess by accident, according to her book. According to carriestevens.com, where she's promoting her book, she had a life in which she had intimate encounters with marquee celebrities from all walks of life. Rock stars, Oscar-winning actors, movie stars, royalty, a future president, sports legends, and billionaires. It's a life she shared with the privileged and powerful that took her from Kiss's tour bus to the Playboy mansion. Carrie candidly admits that she chose to become a sex object because she couldn't escape being treated like one. She takes you on an unapologetic whirlwind adventure of debauchery, dysfunction, heartache, with humor and wisdom. And by the end of the book, she doesn't figure out, like, why did I behave this way? I'm worth more than this. What I was just used as this, like, piece of candy by all these, elderly, wealthy, and famous men. I mean, she's a nice person, I'm sure. No faults other than, her existence setting the feminist movement back a generation or two.
Hi, my name is Pam, and I'm a sex addict.
That was Carrie on 2.5 Men, playing a scene with Charlie Sheen, where Charlie is in a recovery group. Carrie has had some bit parts. She played a rock and roll groupie in a scene with Jennifer Aniston in a movie. Her claim to fame, though, is her long-term open relationship with Eric Carr, Kiss's second drummer. He replaced Peter Criss, the original drummer. Eric tragically died young of heart cancer. Carrie was with him toward the end on that one and slept with a whole bunch of other guys. We're going to spend a little bit of time reading her book. Not that much. My favorite project that Carrie was involved in was Dino Rock versus Super Gator from 2010. It's a sci-fi horror TV spoof. It premiered on the Sci-Fi cable network, and it's supposed to be a parody of King Kong versus Godzilla. It came out on DVD. Remember those? One of David Carradine's final performances before his tragic and weird suicide. As a teenager, Carrie had posters of rock stars on her wall, Billy Idol. She loved David Lee Roth. And she writes, "How does a small town girl growing up on a dead-end dirt road in a town with more cows than people create bedroom walls that in 5 years flat come to life like an X-rated Disney movie? It's a crazy story. Welcome to my weird existence." And she ends up sleeping with, or at least getting asked out by, all of these guys that are on her posters on her wall growing up. She says that her mother, who had custody of her and her sister, was a rebellious flower child and a feminist who marched for civil rights and women's rights. None of that rubbed off on Carrie, that's for sure. But who wouldn't want to escape to LA from, your hellhole Trump small town? One day, Carrie writes, Chrissy and I and some other local kids were put in the back seat of a pickup truck. We thought we were being taken somewhere fun, but the trip was just to a neighbor's house to watch pigs get castrated. So she, at a very young age, she weasels her way backstage at a U2 concert and talks to Bono, Edge, and Adam Clayton. More significantly, she says, I got a life lesson. I learned the power of feminine wiles. Right then and there, it clicked. My worth was based on my sexual attractiveness. That's pretty outrageous. Now, if at some point in the book she would look back and say, God, was I fucking stupid to think that, fine, but no, she does not. No regrets. She has a pot-smoking boyfriend. She tried to break up with him, and he wouldn't let me. He'd hysterically cry and bash his head on the nearest hard surface until it bled. These books take him with a grain of salt. Fiction, nonfiction, no fact-checking. It's all blurred lines, right? The good thing about Boone's Farm, which is if you don't know, really gross, cheap, sugary wine, is that unlike beer, it has no telltale odor. Really? And she goes to the John Robert Powers Modeling and Finishing School in Worcester, Massachusetts. So she's starting at the bottom. So she meets Eric Carr, the drummer for Kiss. And she says, she's always been a Kiss fan. In 1979, she and her girlfriends dressed up as Kiss for Halloween. And yeah, there's a photo of that, so that is a real fact. And she dressed as Peter Criss, the original drummer. So she hooks up with Eric. We don't want to go into the sexual details, whatever. They go to a county fair on a date. And she describes the sugary sweet smell of the cotton candy and the rank odor of fried onions lathered on greasy hot dogs. I don't know if that's a Massachusetts thing or not, but I've never heard of fried onions on hot dogs. Even though he was 38 and I was now 19, I didn't think about the age difference. He was a rock star, and he seemed ageless.
Bad decisions.
I'd listen to all of his problems and give him advice, even about his other girlfriends. His most recent had been Charisse of the all-female metal band Harry Carey, but I knew he was seeing others. He was a big stud on the road, but he was honest about it. Meanwhile, Carrie's father wants her to live at home and didn't want her to get a job. So what did my rebellious ass do? I got 2 jobs, one at a record store and one working the front desk at a Ramada Inn. I worked at a Ramada Inn as the night porter for about 2 weeks in upstate New York, so I can empathize with her if that story of hers is true, or if my story is true. Who knows? So if you want to be a rock groupie, you have to move to Los Angeles. She's living with some girls in a shitty apartment. She was 19. One of the other girls was only 17 and wild. She was with so many guys that she got 3 STDs in the first 6 months. She does a photo shoot, and the photographer forces the makeup lady to tape her boobs up or something, and she feels humiliated by that, but not enough to stop doing that kind of cheesecake work. And she's an extra on a NBC movie of the week, a teen comedy called Class Cruise. Her audition was to walk in the producer's office with a bikini. She gets the job along with 3 Playboy playmates. Class Cruise is about a group of Mensa students who are rewarded for their academic success by being sent on a luxury cruise where they run into class conflicts with lower plebes that are also on the boat, perhaps working for minimum wage on the boat. It's a poignant political thriller about, class conflict and the perils of capitalism, set on a luxury boat full of Playboy models scantily clad. I thought this was a good accomplishment. She does a TV commercial for Lexus, and she gets her Screen Actors Guild card from that. And also, if you strike it rich and you act in one of these commercials that becomes popular, you get residuals, and she says she got $50,000. Carrie is so lovesick, as she describes, for this rock drummer from Kiss, that I'd even wait for him to come home while he was out having dinner with another girl. Dating a rock star is kind of a nightmare. In the beginning, it's thrilling, but when they're on the road, it's brutal. Eric Carr, deep thinker. After one of their lovemaking sessions, he says, "You got one of those bodies like the girls in the magazines." "What magazines?" I asked. Playboy." "Really?" I said. "I'd never thought of myself that way." "You should do it," Eric said. "I'd be really proud of you." And of course, she goes on to pose nude for Playboy. You can look those pictures up, and she has large breasts of questionable provenance. Very beautiful, woman. Otherwise, not a great actress. So Eric gets sick, and they think it's the flu. No, it's blood cancer. And then he's basically has a horrible experience dying of cancer. And he loses his giant mane of rock star hair because of the chemotherapy. And Gene Simmons and the other members of Kiss Incorporated just fucking cut him loose from the band at that point. And of course, Peter Criss will be coaxed to come back for some of the highly financially successful Kiss reunion tours. Never liked Kiss. I never understood. I get the kabuki theater part of it, but music-wise, it's garbage. Eddie Van Halen put his hands on Eric's shoulders when they met up and said, "Oh man, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry." Of course, Eddie's going to die tragically of cancer too, probably because of his bad health habits and chain smoking. Eric died the same day as Freddie Mercury. Well, we can skip the rest of this book. She goes on to seduce a whole bunch of other famous men. And so she's in Playboy. She has some bit parts in movies and TV shows like Beverly Hills 90210. And she did TV commercials for Miller Ice, Starwood Resorts, Toyota, Little Caesars Pizza, American Laser Centers. The very end of her book here, she says she currently resides in Los Angeles with her son and is the founder of StayYoungAndSkinny.com. This is where my illusions of her, my preconceived image of her is shattered. Carrie Stevens, Stay Young and Skinny. She's peddling some Neutrogena, unprecedented amounts of molecular hydrogen and aqueous systems, patent pending. And you see her in a bathing suit, and, she's styled and made up, but she's now a middle-aged woman that is, you can see it in her face, like she's done some things she regrets, but maybe not. I mean, if you will stoop this low to peddle these dietary supplements, why not try to help your body towards a longevity lifestyle with lemon, chocolate, and cherry-flavored skinny snacks? That's with an X.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This actress is speaking to Inside Edition, claiming Oscar-winning director Oliver Stone inappropriately touched her at a party.
He reached out and just grabbed my breast.
Why is it that I must always return to the lurid and the lowbrow and the garbage, low-budget crap? Why waste time talking about this, capitalist poison? So much of the entertainment industry, people don't realize how bad they've been propagandized their whole lives by everything they see and hear, especially from the mainstream media. And yeah, it is capitalist poison that is destroying your soul. But I don't know, why not, let's do a glass half full appreciation of Carrie Stevens and people. Not everyone can be Jennifer Aniston, like incredibly talented and beautiful and successful movie star. Sometimes you end up being Carrie Stevens. And now the Easter egg. This podcast, episode number 93, was originally a tribute to my friend Robert, who died suddenly of a heart attack last week. And then due to my own stupidity, his daughter found out about it and actually called me from his phone. That was weird. And said, you better, take that down. I don't think Robert would have liked that. Well, enough time has gone by. I've reconsidered. And also, maybe she won't find this. If she does, he's gone. And I kind of shouldn't have taken it down because there's been only one obituary for Robert that I have seen. No one in the family apparently has paid for one in the paper or anything. And yeah, so this episode was going to be called Seattle's Punk Rock King, Robert Bennett. So if you were going to search for Robert Bennett, or Robert Bennett Seattle, I guess, it's such a common name that it's impossible to search for that. But if you were to search for Robert Bennett Seattle, that would have come up. I mean, I know that search engines are going to be able to search within audio of a podcast, but so there, I did that for you, Robert's daughter. I made it so that, yeah, I'm going to give my tribute to him, but like, you can't search for it. You'll have to have already been listening to this episode, and we don't have a lot of listeners. So, and the only reason this obituary came out is because I asked Clark to do so. And this is my old pal, Clark Humphrey, writing an obituary in his newsletter, miskmedia.com, for my old pal, Robert. The heart attack death of former Seattle music promoter Robert Bennett was recently announced on Facebook by his daughter. In the mid-1970s and fresh out of Roosevelt High School, Bennett presented or co-presented shows by the likes of Iggy Pop, Eric Burden, and the now infamous Ramones show at the posh Olympic Hotel. That was one of several businesses he started over the years. Two of those businesses were escort services. He was convicted in 1995 of racketeering, money laundering, and credit card fraud charges in association. with that. In recent years, Bennett quietly lived in Renton and ran an independent restaurant delivery service. And now, the Easter egg. The episode I recorded within 24 hours of Robert's death and then took down, and now it's back up for all eternity. Seattle punk rock king Robert Bennett. Robert was a friend of mine. I worked for him for years. Passed away yesterday of a heart attack, according to Zedra, his daughter. In 1977, Robert brought the Ramones to Seattle, to the Fancy Olympic Hotel. Our source here is HistoryLink and Eric Carr in the Seattle Times. The seminal punk group, the Ramones, played in the State Olympic Hotel in the Georgian Room, a 3,600 square foot tall hall with a beautiful 31-foot ceiling. Their music literally shook the guests in the lobby as a crowd of 400 to 500, mostly kids, overflowed the 150-person capacity venue on March 6, 1977. Robert and his fellow Roosevelt high school grad Neil Hubbard promoted the show. Cost them $1,000 to book the band. Bennett had the cash. He was working at a burglar alarm company. He was always an entrepreneur and a resourceful businessman. They printed up a poster. The Ramones were on a little Pacific Northwest tour. They played at the Rocker Tavern in Aberdeen, kind of a redneck shit kicker bar. When the Ramones came on in Seattle, bam, it was a huge rumble, said Neil Hubbard, so unbelievably loud. There was so much energy, it went right into the audience. Hubbard says he has permanent hearing damage in his left ear because of that. Joey Ramone died in 2001 at age 49 of lymphoma. Dee Dee died in 2002 at age 50 of a heroin overdose. Johnny in 2004 at age 55 of prostate cancer. And Tommy Ramone died in 2014 at the age of 65 of bile duct cancer. This article by Peter Bleka on historylink.org sort of cribs from the Lycidas piece. One of the more bizarre rock events of recent times, New York's toughest punk band in the ritziest hotel in Seattle. Now, Robert did not just come out of the blue to promote this show. He published 3 issues of this punk rock magazine with full color cover called Twisted, featuring all the punk rock stuff of 1976, 77, Iggy Pop and Sex Pistols and whatnot. And he heard that the Ramones were coming to town and they were going to play at the Aquarius Tavern in Shoreline, which is like a hippie band place, and it's also 21 and over. So they got a hold of the Ramones management. 400 to 500 kids showed up at this show and paid $5 each. And I guess Robert earned enough to buy a car, according to HistoryLink. I had framed those 3 issues of Twisted magazine in my apartment in Belltown while Robert went away to prison. So it's actually, I took over his apartment, a beautiful loft, 1-bedroom. You could stand up in the loft, high ceilings. And while he went to prison, and then I just kept it and stayed there for 10 years. And I gave back the, of course, the framed copies of his magazine, but that was a cherished bit of Seattle history that I had on my wall for a while. June 23rd, 1995, Seattle Times, prostitution kingpin found guilty. A Seattle man who built an escort empire was found guilty in federal court yesterday of 50 counts of racketeering, money laundering, and credit card fraud. but still secret is his confidential list of the 8,700 customers who made him a very wealthy man. Now, Robert was running a limo service, being a rock promoter, and also running an escort service. The Seattle police were on to him for years, and then the feds got involved. They could never get one of his workers, anyone, to testify against him because he was a really good, generous boss and a good guy. And so, as is the case a lot of times, they had to nail him on, money, tax evasion, that kind of thing. He made millions of dollars. He had a beautiful condo on the top of Capitol Hill in Seattle and was living the high life. When he finally got charged, they took everything. And then he fled. This is a funny story. He took off before one of his hearings. He was a no-show. And then the Secret Service actually came to visit me and tried to ask me about him. I was in my little magazine office in Elaine's group of art studios down in the basement in Belltown, and these two Secret Service guys come in, and the first thing I thought is that they were very short. Like, I thought Secret Service guys were these big guys, right? And they're these short weasels. But it's Seattle, so they're in the boonies. If they're not assigned to the president and they're in the Seattle region, I guess they're the scrubs. And so they offered me $5,000 for information about Robert. If I had known where he was, obviously you don't do that. But I thought that was like, really, $5,000? It was also rudimentary and weird. According to the Seattle Times, Bennett made millions of dollars between 1981 and 1992, which is around when I met him. He guarded his database of customers with a high security system away from the place where he conducted business. Prosecutors said they could file charges against his customers. Of course, that never happened. And that list, I guess, is going to always remain a secret. I asked him about it jokingly once, but so one imagines that this is not to compare Robert to Jeffrey Epstein or anything, but there's a lot of compromat on that list, a lot of rich and famous guys on Robert's list, and guessing that information is long gone. He's on the run, and he was calling himself Robert Mariposa, working at a warehouse in L.A., They found him, and then he had to go to jail. The sad part is, like, he hated prison food, and he just got really skinny in jail. He's kind of a stocky guy, and his favorite food was American food, burgers and stuff, which is weird because he started this food delivery service, to-go services, and I designed his logo, and you can see that there's a fleet of vans. It's based in Renton, that have this logo on it that I designed drunkenly on a cocktail napkin one night, and then, came home and made it real on the computer. And for years, I worked on his designing menus for his company. South King County Restaurant Delivery Guide, Restaurants to Go. His brother also had a delivery service. That's a long story. And the business was this: he'd print these guides with the glossy, cover and mail them out. And it was just a book of menus. And then you would call him and he would arrange with the restaurants that didn't do delivery otherwise. This is an early Uber Eats thing to, go pick up the food, and then he got a percentage. And that was a thriving business. He worked his ass off. Maybe this is partially why he passed away relatively young. He was always working there, always. I saw him a few months ago. I popped in knowing he'd be there. And he could have retired. I guess he told me when I saw him last, he owned a few houses. He had saved his money. But, imagine if you're a small business person. Well, if you don't pay someone $50,000 to work for you and you do that work, you get an extra $50,000 on top of all the profit, right? That theory. So that's what he loved to do, is sit there on the phone dispatching, for food. And it's funny, that kind of grows out of he was a magazine publisher, and he delivered girls by dispatching for them, and then he ends up doing this. It's all part of the same career. Robert was involved in opening the Belltown nightclub Under the Rail, which was beneath the monorail in a big old dirty warehouse, along with my old pal Jean-Baptiste, who still owes me money, probably owes a lot of people money. And unfortunately, Robert's music promotion career got cut short because they sent him away. Baptiste operated. He might still operate. Here's a poster I did for Under the Rail. Black Happy New Year, Black Happy, Cherry Poppin' Daddies, and Medicine Hat. Friday, December 31st, 1993. They also did a ton of reggae shows at Under the Rail. This might be how the first stuff I did for The Stranger, I did all the advertising for Under the Rail. And then, of course, part of the same group for Louis at the Ballard Firehouse. This was an old firehouse that became a shitty nightclub, and with has-been bands like Iron Butterfly playing there. And this guy, Louis, the owner, this Greek guy, great guy, real fun, kind of a crook. Like, drink prices changed depending on what bands were playing. The bathrooms were always clogged and smashed up. It was fairly wild. I did see Iron Butterfly. They played there more than twice. Here's an ad from Month Magazine, June 1994. That's a hipster magazine I worked for. An ad for Under the Rail. Leon Russell. Okay, that's a big show. Merle Sanders for the Deadheads. Desmond Decker, the Smithereens. A lot of Deadhead shit like Leftover Salmon. David Lee Roth. Okay, that's a big show. And then they did lots of reggae. Toots and the Maytals and Inner Circle. Back in the old days, Robert was the first hipster guy around town to own a cell phone. It was one of those giant cell phones, and then you had to have like a giant transmitter in the trunk of your car. In Clark Humphrey's seminal history of the Seattle music scene, Loser, let's see what he has to say about Robert. About the Ramones show, he says, about 500 people paid $5 to Blitzkrieg Bop with the 4 faux bros from Queens, who played a 20-minute set of the only songs they knew at the time, took a short break, then played the same set all over again. Under the Rail, this is also from Loser, capacity 900, I guess, and I'm sure they crammed more into there. The first show, August 1993, with Tad, Voodoo Gearshift, and Kill Sybil, in a benefit for the investigation into Mia Zapata's murder. Again, not every episode I have to mention Mia Zapata and how we'll never talk about her. And also Nirvana. Nirvana played there at the last minute, and so that was a raucous show. In Utero had just come out. I really always wanted to get Robert on this podcast to do a history of the early Seattle punk rock scene episode, and he passed away yesterday. Now we can't do that. Godspeed, Robert. I'll see you on the other side. You were a good person and a good friend.
Find out more at doomedplanet.com. Goodbye.
5, 6, 7, 8. Goodbye. This is it.